two brothers endured unfair treatment the entire flight, but fate gave them the chance to turn the tables. You won't believe how they changed everything. The airport hummed like a hive, every corner buzzing with hurried travelers, sharp intercom announcements, and the faint whiff of overpriced coffee mingling with the scent of jet fuel. Amid the sea of faces, Malik and Marlon Parker stood out, not because they tried to, but because they couldn't help it. Identical black twins, tall and athletic, they had that kind of quiet confidence that made people pause and wonder if they were someone important. Spoiler alert, they were. Malik adjusted his duffel bag, the strap slung casually over one shoulder, while Marlon approached the gate agent, handing over their boarding passes with a wide grin. "Morning," Marlon quipped, his deep voice warm with a touch of humor. "This flight going somewhere sunny, right? I didn't pack for the cold." The gate agent chuckled, clearly charmed. "You're all set. Have a great flight." Before they could move to the boarding line, Malik noticed an elderly woman nearby, clearly struggling to wrestle her carry-on into submission. The bag wobbled precariously on the edge of the chair as she tried to catch her breath. Without hesitation, Marlon stepped forward. "Ma'am, let me take care of that for you," he said, effortlessly lifting the bag and placing it securely on the floor beside her. "Oh, bless your heart," the woman said, her wrinkled hands patting his arm in gratitude. "You young men are so kind." Malik offered her a reassuring smile. "Traveling's stressful enough without wrestling with luggage. You're almost there." The moment could have been a Hallmark ad for good manners, but the vibe shifted faster than you could say, "Not today." Standing a few feet away, a flight attendant in a pristine navy blue uniform had been watching. Her name badge read, Darlene, though her expression screamed trouble. The polished smile she wore for everyone else dropped the second her eyes landed on the twins. Her gaze darted to their tickets, and she strolled over with the kind of authority only given to people with too much time on their hands. "Are you sure you're in the right line?" she asked, her tone as sharp as her red lipstick. Marlon arched a brow, his expression calm but questioning. "Pretty sure, ma'am. Group A right here." Her lips tightened into a thin line, the kind people make when they're pretending to smile but really want to roll their eyes. "Just making sure," she muttered, stepping aside. But as they walked past, she added, just loud enough to be heard, "Figures." Malik caught the comment and glanced at his brother. Marlon gave a small shake of his head, a silent let it go. They weren't strangers to moments like these, but that didn't mean they liked them. The flight itself started smoothly enough. They settled into their seats, Malik scrolling through his phone while Marlon leaned back with his headphones on. But as soon as Darlene began her rounds, the temperature in their section dropped faster than the cabin AC could account for. When Malik politely asked for a pillow, Darlene's response was clipped, "We don't have extras." Not 5 minutes later, she handed one to a passenger across the aisle without a second thought. Marlon requested water, and her hand slipped, spilling it onto his armrest. "Oops," she said with a smirk that didn't bother pretending to be sorry. The tension simmered quietly, like a pot about to boil over. The twins exchanged looks. Marlon said, "Don't react," while Malik replied, "I'm trying." But the breaking point came during the snack service. Malik, ever polite, asked for a granola bar. Simple. Apparently not. Darlene's voice was loud enough to carry to the next row. "You've already had enough. We can't have people taking advantage." A collective gasp rippled through the cabin, passengers craning their necks to catch the drama. Malik's jaw tightened as he processed her words. "Excuse me?" "I think you heard me," she said, the corner of her mouth lifting in what could only be described as a challenge. A man a few rows back muttered, "That's uncalled for." Another passenger pulled out their phone, angling it discreetly to record. Marlon leaned forward, his voice steady and measured. "You don't have to be rude. We've done nothing to deserve this." Darlene's eyes narrowed, her veneer of professionalism cracking. "I suggest you watch your tone. Don't make a scene." A scene? That's what she was worried about? Malik leaned back in his seat, hands gripping the armrest to keep his cool. The air around them felt heavy, like the entire cabin was holding its breath. The plane hummed softly as it cruised through clear skies, but in row 14, the tension felt like it could shatter glass. Malik and Marlon Parker sat calmly, their outward composure masking the storm brewing inside. They weren't strangers to moments like this, microaggressions so blatant they practically screamed. But that didn't mean they enjoyed being the center of the world's most awkward reality show. Passengers whispered behind cupped hands, some with sympathetic glances, others with the kind of discomfort that screamed, "I don't want to get involved." Across the aisle, a young black woman met Malik's eyes and gave a slight nod. No words were needed. Her look said everything. "I see you. I know this game. Hold your head up." Darlene, however, was still in rare form. Her hostility hovered like a dark cloud, growing thicker with every passing minute. During beverage service, she intentionally skipped their row, making an exaggerated show of pouring drinks and laughing with other passengers. Malik, refusing to give her the satisfaction, raised a hand politely. "Excuse me, could we get some napkins, please?" Her response? A loud, exaggerated sigh, as if he'd asked her to handcraft an entire meal. "We're not your personal servants," she snapped, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. The cabin went dead silent. Passengers stiffened, exchanging uneasy looks. An older white man sitting directly behind the twins leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, that was uncalled for." Darlene spun on her heels, her face flushed. "Stay out of it, sir. This doesn't concern you." Oh, but it did. The whole plane could feel the weight of her words hanging in the air, the kind of heavy that makes you wonder how people can carry so much bias and not trip over it. Malik took a slow breath, his fingers drumming on the armrest, while Marlon's jaw clenched ever so slightly. Their silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. Then the calm shattered. The intercom beeped and the captain's voice came through. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've encountered unexpected turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelts." The plane jostled slightly, and a few murmurs of discomfort rippled through the cabin. But just as the passengers began to relax, chaos erupted. A man 2 rows ahead started convulsing, his hands clutching his chest as his body lurched forward. His wife's terrified scream pierced the air. "He's not breathing." For a second, everything froze. Passengers stared wide-eyed and motionless as panic gripped the cabin. Darlene, pale as the clouds outside, stood rooted to the spot, her hands fluttering uselessly. "Is there a doctor on board?" she stammered, her voice trembling. No one moved. The silence felt eternal. Then Malik and Marlon unbuckled their seatbelts in unison, their movements sharp and deliberate. "We've got this," Marlon said, his voice steady and authoritative. The twins sprang into action, their calm demeanor cutting through the chaos. Malik knelt beside the man, checking for vitals, while Marlon directed the passengers around them. "Clear the aisle. Give us space," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. The man's wife clutched her seat, her face wet with tears. Marlon placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "He's going to be okay. Just breathe." "Get the emergency medical kit," Malik barked at the flight crew, his voice sharp but controlled. A crew member jolted into action, scrambling to retrieve the kit, while Darlene stood frozen, her face a mask of helplessness. The man's pulse was faint, but Malik and Marlon worked in perfect sync, their movements precise and efficient. Malik tilted the man's head back to stabilize his airway, while Marlon checked his breathing. The passengers watched in stunned silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Darlene, still hovering uselessly nearby, finally managed to stammer, Who are you?" Malik didn't even glance her way, his focus on the man whose life hung in the balance. "We're the people saving his life," he said flatly, his voice carrying a sharp edge that needed no further explanation. For 20 minutes, the twins worked tirelessly, stabilizing the man as the plane prepared for an emergency landing. By the time paramedics boarded to take over, the man was breathing steadily, his wife's sobs replaced with tearful gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching Malik's hand as the paramedics escorted her husband off the plane. As the adrenaline began to fade, the passengers erupted into applause. The sound was loud and genuine, a release of tension that had gripped the cabin for what felt like hours. Malik and Marlon sank back into their seats, their composure intact despite the weight of what had just happened. Darlene lingered in the aisle, her face a mixture of confusion and something else. Shame, maybe. She opened her mouth to speak, but quickly shut it again, retreating to the galley. As the passengers began murmuring among themselves, the plane had barely stopped before paramedics rushed in. Malik and Marlon stepped aside as the medical team took over. The man's wife clutched their hands, tears streaming. "You saved his life. Thank you doesn't feel like enough." "You don't have to thank us," Malik said with a nod. "He's in good hands now." As passengers disembarked, many stopped to shake their hands or offer quiet thanks. A young man with a phone said, "You two are heroes. People need to hear this." Darlene lingered near the back, visibly nervous. Gone was her sharp-tongued confidence. After hesitating, she shuffled toward them. I didn't realize you were," she trailed off. Malik's tone was razor-sharp, competent, capable, human. "I didn't mean," she stammered, but Marlon cut her off. Pulling out an ID badge that read United States Special Forces. "We're trained for crises," he said, "but nothing prepares you for being treated the way you treated us." Darlene's face flushed. "I didn't know." "That's the problem," Malik said firmly. "You didn't bother to find out. Next time, respect people, not because of what they might be, but because it's right." The silence broke with applause from lingering passengers. A man holding his phone declared, "This is going viral." Darlene's face paled as the twins grabbed their bags. Outside, fellow soldiers saluted them. Malik nodded. "Think she learned her lesson?" Marlon smirked. "If not, the internet will." Their car disappeared into the night, but their story had just begun. A reminder that dignity isn't something you prove. It's something everyone deserves.